When you reach a certain age, you start to believe you've seen everything life has to offer. Births, deaths, marriages, heartbreaks. But at 73, I learned that life still had the power to surprise me in ways I never imagined. The day my granddaughter Emily's secret came out was the day everything I believed about my family and my own past was turned upside down. Emily has always been special to me. Out of all my grandchildren, she was the one who reminded me most of myself when I was young. Curious, stubborn, and far too perceptive for her own good. She was quiet, yes, but when she did speak, her words always carried weight. My daughter Anna used to say, "Mom, she has an old soul." And maybe that was true. I just didn't know how literally that would turn out to be. It started one ordinary Sunday afternoon. Emily, who was 17 at the time, came to visit me at my old farmhouse. I was sitting on the porch, knitting as usual, when she arrived carrying a small wooden box I didn't recognize. She looked nervous, pale even. "Grandma," she said softly, "can we talk? Alone?" I smiled and led her inside. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" She hesitated, setting the box gently on the coffee table. "I found something," she said. "Something that belongs to you." That immediately caught my attention. I hadn't left anything important lying around for decades. She opened the box carefully, and inside were letters. Old ones, yellowed and delicate, tied together with faded ribbon. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't seen those letters since before my husband, Robert, passed away 30 years ago. "Where did you get these?" I asked, my voice trembling. "In the attic," she said quietly. "Mom told me to help her look for photo albums, and I found this hidden behind a loose panel in the wall." My heart started to race. Those letters weren't just any letters. They were the ones I'd written to someone long before I met my husband, a man I'd loved when I was barely Emily's age. His name was Thomas. He was my first love, the one who went off to war and never came back. At least that's what I was told. Emily handed me one of the envelopes, and I saw the familiar handwriting. His handwriting. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the letter. The words blurred before my eyes. "My dearest Margaret," it began. "By the time you read this, I'll be far from home, but I want you to know that what we had was real." Tears welled in my eyes. I hadn't seen those words in more than 50 years. But then something strange happened. Emily said, "Grandma, that's not all. There's something else in the box." Underneath the stack of letters was a small photograph, faded but clear enough to make out two young people standing together, me and Thomas. But there was someone else in the picture too, a baby. I stared at it, my mind reeling. "This can't be right," I whispered. Emily looked at me carefully. "Is that you?" I nodded slowly, unable to speak. The photograph was from the summer of 1959. I remembered that day perfectly. I remembered the love I felt, the promises we made. But I also remembered the heartbreak when I was told Thomas had been killed overseas. And now, looking at the photograph of the baby in his arms, my chest tightened. Because I never had a child with Thomas, or at least, that's what I believed. Emily leaned forward. "Grandma, Mom doesn't know anything about this, does she?" I shook my head, tears slipping down my cheeks. "No. No one does." I didn't know how to explain it to her. The truth was buried deep, hidden under decades of silence. But the more I looked at that photograph, the more pieces started to fall into place. The dates, the letters, the hidden box, it all pointed to one thing. Someone had lied to me. That night, after Emily left, I sat alone by the fireplace, reading every letter one by one. And then I found it. The final letter. The one I had never read. It was postmarked months after Thomas was supposedly killed. The return address was local. My heart stopped. He hadn't died in the war. He'd come back. In the letter, Thomas wrote that he'd returned to find I had already married Robert. He said he'd tried to visit but was turned away by my father. And then came the part that broke me. "I took our son with me. He's all I have left of you. Our son." I dropped the letter, trembling. I'd never known. My parents had always been strict, controlling, determined to protect the family's reputation. Back then, an unmarried pregnant woman was a scandal. My father must have hidden everything: the birth, the child, even Thomas's return. They'd told me the baby hadn't survived. Now, at 73, I realized I'd had a son I never knew existed. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking. If I had a son, then that meant Emily had found her great uncle, maybe even her grandfather, if things were more complicated than I thought. The next morning, I called Emily and told her to come back. When she arrived, I told her everything. About Thomas, about the baby, about the lies. She listened quietly, her eyes wide with disbelief. When I finished, she said something that made my blood run cold. "Grandma," she said carefully, "I think I've already met him." I stared at her, unable to process the words. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "There's this man, Mr. Turner, who volunteers at my school's community center. He's older, maybe in his 60s. He told me he was adopted, but he doesn't know who his real parents were. He showed me a photo once of his biological mother. Grandma, she looks just like you." I couldn't breathe. My hands started to shake again. "Emily, are you sure?" She nodded. "I didn't think much of it at the time, but after finding those letters, I had to tell you." The following week, Emily arranged for me to meet him. His name was Michael Turner. The moment he walked into the cafe, my heart almost stopped. He had Thomas's eyes, the same piercing blue, the same gentle expression. And when he smiled nervously and said, "Mrs. Clark, I'm not sure why you wanted to meet me, but your granddaughter said it was important," I felt tears welling up before I could even speak. We sat down, and I told him everything. The story I had kept buried for a lifetime. How I loved Thomas. How I was told my baby had died. How I never knew the truth until now. When I showed him the photo of me and Thomas holding the baby, his hand trembled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small locket. Inside was the same photo, but torn in half. "I've had this my whole life," he said, voice breaking. "I always wondered who the woman was." We both cried. It was as if time folded in on itself, bringing back decades of loss and pain all at once. He wasn't angry. He didn't blame me. Instead, he said softly, "I always felt like something was missing. I guess now I know what it was." That meeting changed everything. I introduced Michael to the family slowly. My daughter Anna was in shock. She had grown up believing she was my only child. It took time, but eventually, she came to understand that none of this was my fault. Emily, though, she handled it differently. She seemed relieved, almost as if solving this mystery had been her purpose all along. One evening, I asked her why she'd decided to search in the first place. She hesitated before answering. "I don't know, Grandma. I just had this feeling, like I needed to find something important for you." Then she added almost shyly, "Sometimes, when I dream, I see him. The man from the photo. I didn't know who he was, but he always looked at me like he knew me." I didn't know what to say to that. Maybe it was just coincidence. Or maybe, just maybe, some bonds are strong enough to reach across generations. Over the next few months, our family grew closer. Michael became part of our lives. He spent weekends at my home, helping me with repairs, sharing stories about his adoptive parents, and learning about the family he never knew he had. And as for Emily, she blossomed. It was as if discovering the truth had lifted a weight from her. Then one afternoon, while we were sitting together, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Grandma, I think I found where he's buried." I realized that everything, every secret, every lie, every loss, had led us here, to this moment. As I placed flowers on the grave, Michael put a hand on my shoulder. "He'd be proud of you," he said quietly. I smiled through tears. "No," I whispered. He'd be proud of us. Now, when I look at Emily, I see more than my granddaughter. I see the bridge between what was lost and what was found. Her curiosity, her persistence, her heart, they brought a family back together that had been broken for generations. Sometimes I wonder if the past finds ways to speak through those who come after us. If maybe, somehow, Emily was guided to uncover the truth that was meant to be known all along. Her secret, her discovery, didn't just change our future. It gave us back a piece of our history, one we didn't even know we were missing. And as strange as it sounds, I think Thomas knew that someday we'd find our way back to each other. Through his son, through our granddaughter, through love that refused to die, even when everything else did.